The WNBA just got caught red-handed promoting a gambling scandal involving two of its biggest stars, and then tried to sweep it under the rug like nothing happened. What you're about to see will change how you look at this league forever. Picture this. Two active players make a real money bet on the outcome of a game they're both playing in. That's not a rumor. That's not a leaked screenshot. That's the WNBA's own official account posting it, promoting it, celebrating it, before quietly deleting it and pretending it never happened. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this friendly bet is one of the biggest credibility tests this league has ever faced, and why the silence afterward might be an even bigger problem than the bet itself. Stick around because it gets a lot messier than you think. Listen, if this video opened your eyes even a little bit, please don't just scroll past and forget about it. This channel exists because people like you actually care about fairness in this league, about players being held to the same standard no matter who they are. Every single subscribe helps this conversation reach more people who deserve to know the truth about what's really happening behind the scenes. It genuinely means everything to me when you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. It tells me this work matters, that digging into these stories isn't for nothing. So if you believe accountability should apply to everyone equally, if you want honest breakdowns like this one every single time something goes down in the WNBA, subscribe to WNBA Analysis right now. I promise you, I'm not going anywhere. I'll keep bringing you the truth no matter how uncomfortable it gets. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's start with the moment that kicked all of this off. Angel Reese, sitting at the podium in a post-game press conference, casually asked about a bet she made with Paige Bueckers. "Yeah, I'll be requesting my Apple Pay after this." Laughter. But no, I mean Paige is a great player. Holding her to 16 points, that's tough. She's just so good, her mid-range is obviously so good. But I think our defense tonight, we all did a good job. Bueckers was throwing at her, everybody was throwing at her tonight. I think they did a good job holding her together. I'm glad we just got this win. Watch that moment again. Angel Reese just casually announced on camera, in an official press conference, that she's collecting money from Paige Bueckers over a bet the two of them made on their own game. She's smiling about it like she just ordered lunch. That level of comfort with something that violates nearly every professional sports gambling policy on the books tells you everything about how seriously the WNBA is treating this, which is to say, not seriously at all. Here's what makes this even wilder. This wasn't a leaked text message. It wasn't an overheard conversation caught on a hot mic. The WNBA itself posted this to its official social media accounts. They promoted it. They framed it as fun, lighthearted content. They treated a public admission of gambling on league games like it was cute material for a highlight reel. And now, after quietly deleting the post and issuing a vague statement, they're telling everyone there will be zero consequences for either player. So the WNBA is currently being called out across mainstream media for refusing to take accountability for what's now being described as a genuine scandal, the Paige Bueckers and Angel Reese gambling situation. The league released a statement confirming there will be no punishment for either player over an off-court bet that played out in front of the entire world. And what stands out more than anything is that the league itself was the one that put this content out there in the first place. Let's be crystal clear about what actually happened. Two active players made a financial wager on the outcome of a game they were both competing in. Angel Reese of the Chicago Sky and Paige Bueckers of the Connecticut Sun agreed to an Apple Pay bet ahead of their matchup. Reese's team won, and she publicly announced she'd be collecting. The league's official account shared this with millions of followers. Then, once people started pointing out that this is explicitly prohibited under nearly every major sports league's gambling policy, the WNBA quietly deleted the post and released a statement saying they'd address it internally. No suspension. No fine. No investigation. Just a line reminding everyone that players are well aware of the league's policies prohibiting betting on WNBA games, which is corporate language for, "We're hoping this blows over by tomorrow." ESPN dug into this story and published a pointed article, reporting that WNBA stars Paige Bueckers and Angel Reese would not face any punishment after a since-deleted social media post showed the two discussing a friendly wager ahead of their team's matchup. According to a league source who spoke with ESPN, no disciplinary action would be taken at all. Now compare that response to how virtually every other professional sports league handles gambling violations. Terry Rozier faced serious scrutiny over gambling-related allegations. College basketball players have been removed from competition entirely for betting on games, sometimes games their own teams weren't even involved in, because the rule across sports is simple and absolute. You do not bet on your sport, period. Here's where it gets even more indefensible. The WNBA's own collective bargaining agreement explicitly states that any player found guilty of wagering on WNBA competition can face suspension, fines, or outright dismissal from the league, with the commissioner holding sole discretion to impose those penalties. So the framework exists. The rules are written down in black and white. The consequences are clearly defined. The league simply chose not to apply any of them. And this is what makes the situation so hard to justify. It wasn't Angel Reese who leaked this on her personal account. It was the WNBA's own X account that shared the post, presenting it as if it were harmless, shareable content. They could have claimed it was a fan edit or a meme that slipped through. Instead, they treated an on-camera admission of gambling as something worth amplifying. This is exactly where the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. Multiple commentators have raised the same question. What would have happened if this was Caitlin Clark? If the Indiana Fever rookie had made a bet with another player, announced it publicly, and the league had promoted it before scrambling to delete it, would the response really have been no punishment, business as usual? The consensus among analysts is that Clark would have faced immediate suspension, not because she's done anything to deserve harsher treatment, but because the level of scrutiny on her is so intense that the league likely couldn't afford to let something like this slide. She's become the face of the WNBA's ratings surge. She's brought an unprecedented level of mainstream attention to the league. And yet the accountability that comes with that spotlight apparently doesn't extend equally to everyone. Think about the optics here. The WNBA has spent this entire season celebrating record viewership, new media rights deals, and a surge of new investment. They've positioned this era as a genuine turning point for women's basketball. And then they fumble something this fundamental. Gambling integrity is the foundation of professional sports. It's why Pete Rose remains banned from baseball. It's why the NFL suspended Calvin Ridley for a full season over betting on games from his phone while away from the team. It's why universities have expelled student athletes over comparatively minor gambling violations. Some commentators have pushed back, arguing that in the any press is good press sense, this controversy still drives engagement, that even bad press keeps people talking about the league. And to be fair, everyone is talking about it right now. According to the collective bargaining agreement itself, any player found by the commissioner, after a hearing, to have been guilty of wagering, directly or indirectly, or of offering or attempting to offer money or anything of value related to the outcome, score, or any other aspect of WNBA competition, shall be, at the sole discretion of the commissioner, subject to a fine, suspension, and/or dismissal, and disqualified from any further association with the WNBA. That's not vague language. That's an explicit, written standard. The WNBA statement reveals something even more concerning than the lack of punishment itself. They said the post missed the mark, and that they'd use this as an opportunity to remind players that conversations about wagering can carry negative consequences. Notice what's missing there. They're not saying the bet itself was wrong. They're saying that talking about it publicly was the mistake. That's not a gambling integrity policy. That's a public relations strategy. The message being sent to players isn't "don't bet on games." It's "don't get caught talking about betting on games." And that distinction matters enormously for a league trying to build credibility as a serious professional operation. Players receive annual training on exactly these policies. Every year, the league sits down with players and spells out precisely what they cannot do, and betting on league games sits at the very top of that list. So when the league says players are well aware of the rules, that's not an exaggeration. Angel Reese knew this was prohibited. Paige Bueckers knew this was prohibited. The social media team that posted the clip should have known this was prohibited too. And yet it happened anyway in the most public way imaginable. Some analysts have gone further, drawing uncomfortable comparisons, pointing out that other athletes who've been well aware of gambling rules in other leagues still faced real consequences, and questioning why the standard here appears so much softer. Let's zoom out and talk about why this matters far beyond these two specific players. Sports gambling is a massive and rapidly growing industry. States continue to legalize it. Sportsbooks are forming direct partnerships with leagues. Betting lines get discussed openly during broadcasts. And with that much money flowing through the system, the integrity of the competition itself becomes non-negotiable. Fans need to trust that what they're watching is legitimate, that players are competing to win, not managing a spread. When a league treats a gambling violation this casually, it chips away at that trust. It doesn't matter that this was likely a small, friendly bet between two players who respect each other. What matters is the precedent it sets. If the WNBA won't enforce its own rules when players admit to a violation on camera, how can fans trust that rules are being enforced behind closed doors, where nobody's watching. And here's what makes this genuinely frustrating. The WNBA didn't need this controversy. The league is finally getting the attention it's long deserved. Attendance is up. Viewership is up. Merchandise sales are climbing. Corporate sponsors are investing at levels the league hasn't seen before. This should be a victory lap season. Instead, they're dealing with self-inflicted controversies like this one, on top of other flashpoints around player conduct and how the league markets its stars. The comparison to other leagues keeps surfacing because it's so stark. When the NFL discovers players betting on games, they launch investigations lasting months, interviewing dozens of people, reviewing phone records and financial transactions. When violations are confirmed, suspensions follow that cost players millions of dollars and entire seasons. The NBA runs similarly comprehensive protocols. Even the appearance of impropriety triggers a formal review. Players are barred from entering casinos in cities where their team is playing. They can't associate with known gamblers. They can't even participate in fantasy leagues involving their own sport. The rules are extensive, and enforcement is consistent. The WNBA's response to this situation was to delete the post, issue a vague statement and move on. No formal investigation into whether other bets exist. No review of whether this was isolated or part of a broader pattern. No public acknowledgement that this was, in fact, a serious violation undermining the integrity of the league. Just a quiet hope that the news cycle rolls on to something else. Here's why this moment matters more than it might seem. The WNBA is at a genuinely pivotal point in its development. The league has been around for over 2 decades, which sounds established until you remember the NBA was still signing its first major TV deals and building its first modern arenas at a comparable stage. The WNBA is still shaping its identity, its market, and its long-term business model. Part of that process means proving it can operate with the same standards as its male counterparts. When a moment like this arrives and the response is this weak, it reinforces a perception that the league isn't quite ready for prime time, that different rules apply here than they do in the NBA, NFL, or MLB. Whether or not that perception is fair, it's damaging to a league actively courting serious long-term investment. Think about it from a sponsor's perspective. You're a major corporation weighing a multi-million-dollar partnership. You've watched the ratings climb. You've watched engagement grow. You're ready to sign. And then you see the league's own account promoting a gambling exchange between active players, followed by a response that basically amounts to "Oops, our bad, no big deal." How confident does that leave you in the league's leadership? Or think about it from a broadcast partner's perspective. You've just signed a rights deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Your entire business model depends on viewers trusting that what they're watching is legitimate competition. Then players casually admit, on air, to betting on their own games, with zero consequences. How do you explain that to your audience? How do you keep selling the idea that this is elite professional sport when the league won't enforce its own basic integrity standards? This issue is especially sensitive given how fast the sports betting landscape has changed. A decade ago, legally betting on sports meant a trip to Las Vegas. Now it takes seconds from a phone in most states. The barrier to entry is essentially gone. And with that accessibility comes real risk. Players are constantly approached by betting companies for partnerships. Their individual performances are now turned into betting props in real time. The temptation, and the opportunity, to get tangled up in gambling has never been higher. That's exactly why other leagues have gotten stricter about gambling policy, not looser. The NBA has added more restrictions. The NFL has increased penalties. College conferences have implemented monitoring systems specifically to catch violations earlier. Every major sports body seems to recognize that the explosion of legal betting demands stronger safeguards. Every league, apparently, except this one, which just demonstrated you can openly admit to betting on your own game in a press conference and walk away with absolutely nothing. And let's address the question several commentators keep circling back to. Would the response have been different for different players? The idea that Caitlin Clark might face harsher treatment for an identical violation isn't baseless speculation. It's rooted in a pattern fans have watched play out all season. When Clark takes a hard foul, there's debate over whether it was really that severe. When she breaks a record, there's discussion over whether it really counts. When she drives ratings, there's pushback questioning how much credit she deserves. So the question of whether she'd face suspension for a gambling violation while others face nothing isn't hypothetical. It's based on how this league has repeatedly responded to different players in different situations. And if that perception exists, whether it's fully accurate or not, it's a serious problem, because it suggests enforcement depends on who you are rather than what you did. That's corrosive to any organization trying to build long-term legitimacy. The league's promise to address the matter internally is really code for, we're not going to tell you what we did, if anything. That lack of transparency is its own separate problem. When other leagues investigate gambling violations, they publish detailed findings, explaining what happened, which rules were broken, and what penalties were imposed. They do this because transparency builds trust. It shows the organization takes these issues seriously and applies its standards consistently. But handling it internally, with zero public accountability, means nobody actually knows what happened. Maybe there were private fines. Maybe there were stern warnings. Maybe there was nothing at all. We simply don't know, and the league isn't saying. That kind of silence creates space for speculation, rumor, and conspiracy theories to fill the gap. And those theories are almost always worse than whatever actually happened. The timing couldn't be worse either. The WNBA recently finished negotiating a major new media rights deal set to significantly boost league revenue starting in 2026. That deal was built on the league's growth trajectory and its ability to pull in larger, more mainstream audiences. But growth requires credibility. It requires casual fans to take the league seriously. And casual fans who watch players admit to gambling violations with zero consequences aren't going to take this league seriously. They're going to write it off as amateur hour. What makes this whole thing even more frustrating is how preventable it was. Someone on the social media team should have caught it before it ever went live. Someone should have said, maybe we shouldn't be promoting players betting on their own games. And even if it slipped through, the response should have been immediate and decisive. A game suspension for both players, a firm public statement on gambling integrity, a clear signal that this behavior isn't acceptable regardless of intent or who's involved. Instead, we got a deleted post, a soft statement, and business as usual, a message to every single player in the league that the gambling policy is more of a suggestion than a rule. That as long as you don't make it too public, nothing's actually going to happen. So where does that leave us? The WNBA had a real opportunity here, a chance to prove it holds itself to the same professional standards as every other major sports league, a chance to show it takes competitive integrity seriously enough to enforce its own written rules. Instead, it chose the path of least resistance. It protected its stars, avoided the harder conversation, and hoped the story would quietly fade. And maybe it will. Maybe in a few weeks nobody's talking about this anymore. But the precedent has already been set. The message has already gone out. And the next time something like this happens, because there will be a next time, the league will have even less credibility to fall back on, because everyone will remember that two players admitted to betting on their own game and nothing happened. And if nothing happened to them, why should it happen to anyone else? The question was never really whether this was a serious violation. The question was never whether the league has rules against it. It does. The real question is whether the WNBA is willing to enforce its own rules when doing so is inconvenient or uncomfortable. And based on everything we've just walked through, the answer right now appears to be no. That's a real problem for a league trying to be taken seriously as a major professional sports organization, because enforcing your own rules consistently is exactly what makes a league professional in the first place. Skip that step and you're just hoping nobody notices. But people are noticing. And they're talking about it. And that conversation is happening at precisely the wrong moment for a league trying to prove it belongs in the same sentence as the NBA, NFL, and MLB. So, was this just a harmless joke between two friends that got blown out of proportion? Or was it a real integrity violation that the league failed to properly handle? You tell me in the comments, because right now, the WNBA clearly doesn't think it's worth punishing. And that decision, more than the bet itself, might end up being the real scandal here. WNBA analysis.